All right. Well, welcome to the Hopeful Rebel podcast, straight out of Bay Hills. And it's a new podcast that we're starting. Do we really need another podcast? Is this really the best use of our time? I'm Alan, and why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
I am Terrence.
I'm Wesley.
All of us serve on staff together here at Bay Hills Church. And Wes, why do we need another podcast? Do we need another podcast?
It's a great question. It's a question worth asking. Do we need another podcast? My answer to that would be, I think, and I'm hopeful that this podcast will offer something fresh, offer something that provides a new perspective. And most importantly, I think it's just going to be fun for the three of us to get to banter, to enjoy each other, to enjoy learning about new stuff, and maybe take a couple other people along for the journey.
You know, Terrence, what are some of your what makes a good podcast to you? What would make this worthwhile for our listeners?
Well, first of all, our listeners need to understand this is the only podcast that exists ever.
That's
so
right.
Don't listen to anything else.
I
Number
agree.
one.
Yeah.
Number two.
In fact, that's how we should market ourselves.
I think that is.
The Hopeful Rebel, the only podcast.
Sorry, what's a podcast? I've never heard of that
right.
before.
We're creating it right now.
Right now. We are innovating as we speak.
You're watching history, guys.
I have this idea for a thing. It's called a wheel. What do you guys think?
That was also invented in the 1900s, according to Wesley. I think what's going to make this valuable is if it cuts through the noise. The majority of podcasts are something that we have on in the background. And I think what we do when we do that is we allow the world to continue to speak to us, even if that's not what we're trying to do. This needs to cut through all the noise, all the voices we're hearing from the world, and point us back to the one true voice, which is Jesus.
Yeah, and why the Hopeful Rebel? Why is that the name of this podcast? Wesley, what about the word hopeful? And Terrence, then maybe what about the word rebel? Like, why is that the name of what we're doing?
Absolutely. Yeah, my experience in my life, especially growing up where I grew up here in the Bay Area, I feel like there is just kind of an undertone of hopelessness, an undertone of what do we have to look forward to? What even is there to look forward to? And so I think we get that language very much from the sense that as a church, as a community, between the three of us, one of the things we try to embody and to live out is to rebel against that culture. And the way that we do that is through the hope that we find in Jesus.
Yeah, so you could say it this way: in a world full of noise, somebody has to speak with hope. Everybody's yelling, everybody's shouting, things are getting worse, it feels like.
Yep.
But we'll explore that over the course of the season. Terrence, what makes that so rebellious to speak with hope?
Because that's not what culture does. That's not what culture asks us to do, especially, and you're absolutely right. Living in the Bay Area, one of the things that we don't find is faithfulness. And when we say faithfulness, normally we're talking about relationships, but it's not necessarily just relationships. It's faithfulness to anything, to your ideals, to faithfulness to what your convictions are. And what you are as a hopeful rebel, you are someone that even though you're living in Babylon, you're not allowing Babylon to live inside of you.
What do you mean by Babylon?
So go back to Daniel 1. Daniel 1's the best way to look at it. You have people who are thrust into an area where everything that they know about themselves, everything they've known about God is questioned immediately.
Yeah.
They are asked to bend down, to bow down, to give over everything to something or something else. And that's the way our culture is. That obviously, it happens in our culture every 3 to 4 years. There's a shift within people with what they held dear before is not held dear anymore.
So maybe you could say it this way. Hope's not a passive idea. It's an active idea. Mm-hmm. It pushes back against a culture that is trying to transform you, shape you,
rename you
in the case of Daniel 1, like you were talking about. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that's good. We're actually going to be teaching. I don't know if did you see that I changed? Yeah. Our teaching calendar, we were going to be in 1st and 2nd Timothy next year. Now it's 1st and 2nd Peter. Okay. And it's really, that whole book is about how to live in exile and how to push back against all of this.
Love it.
So,
Love it.
All right, so let's get personal for a minute, and then maybe we'll talk more about what people can expect out of this show. So this week, we thought it would be a great idea. I don't know who thought it would be a great idea to talk about what we suck at. It
was Terrence's idea.
It was Terrence's idea.
I would never recommend something like that.
I just brought my diary in, and that's what we got the idea from.
This week's theme has a lot to do with lessons learned, leadership mistakes. Where did we go wrong? What did we learn from the things that we went wrong from? I think there's this idea out there that church leaders are afraid to talk about their mistakes. I think people in general are afraid to talk about their mistakes. And so we thought we would come right out of the gate not saying how awesome things are or we are, but rather that we are human beings still learning, and that's part of what makes this so inherently hopeful. So maybe we should just kind of go around and break the ice right now. Who wants to go first?
I think Terrence just
he did. Yeah, he raised his hand.
I feel like I just got voluntold.
I saw it.
I mean, okay, so Terrence, from this last season, you've seen a lot as a church leader. You're the next gen pastor here on staff, and you've seen, you've held a lot of roles, a lot of titles. You have seen a lot of seasons, a lot of transitions. What stands out to you as maybe the one where you go, there was a lot of things that we didn't do well, and a lot of things that we learned from not doing well?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest one, there was a time where there was a need to make a leadership change. And everyone involved in the discussion was very apprehensive to do this because they kept coming back to this thing. We know there's an issue with this person, but we believe that they can change, and we believe that God can change them, which sounds extremely hopeful. But what was happening is that culture was changing, because culture is not what we say, culture is what we tolerate. And so what we found is that the culture that we were saying of excellence, the culture that we were trying to create.
Okay, so say that again. So culture is not just what we teach, it's what we allow.
Exactly. So you're going to dictate what culture is within the church by what you allow within the church. So if you say we are a church of excellence, and yes, you allow people to not work with excellence, you're creating a culture that's not of excellence. And so what we decided at some point is we needed to move forward. We needed to move forward with what we knew God wanted us to do. And unfortunately, a portion of it was church discipline. And church discipline, when you hear that word, when you hear discipline.
So discipline, leather, whips.
Yes, exactly.
What does that look like in the church? I'm trying to understand.
So church discipline.
On the stage.
Yes, exactly, in front of everyone. No, so everyone runs towards Matthew 18 when they talk about church discipline, but there's so many different ways to look at it. But ultimately, the heart of church discipline is that people can change. That God can change, that God can take what is sinful and redeem it and the person. But what happens too often is we get in the way because we're fearful of what will happen if we walk this road with the person, if we bring this to their attention. And so what we wound up doing as leadership is we went to the person, we addressed what the sin was, and it actually became something a lot more beautiful than what we would anticipate. And so it was a beautiful thing, but one of the things that we fought against, and then the thing that we learned, is that God still works when we are faithful to what he wants us to do. When we put ourselves in the way, when we say we're not sure how God's going to show up in this, then we're limiting the power of what God can do. But when we actually said, no, we know this is what God wants us to do. We don't know what it's going to look like on the backside, but we know God will be faithful through it. He created something beautiful in that situation.
All right, Wes, you're more cynical. You think, right? That this is not the cynical rebel.
Right.
This is the hopeful rebel. Can people change? Does your generation, you're the Gen Z among us, do they feel like people can change, or do they kind of like freeze people where they're at?
Yeah. The messaging from my generation, the messaging that I grew up internalizing was no. And I think that it was only through experiencing the growth and the change that God wanted to activate in my life that mindset has begun to change a little bit. And so there was an experience for me a couple of years ago, a ministry failure, you could say, that led me down a path of really having to dig deep into my own spirit, into my own emotions. What is it that motivates me? What is it that drives me? And coming out of that, the other side of that process, I was shocked at certain things that I just anticipated. I just figured this was what life is. This is normal. This is how my brain works. This is how I'm going to feel for the rest of my life. And I was shocked at what God was able to do in changing that. And so now I bring that mindset into every relationship that I have in ministry.
So what are some of the mistakes that you can make if you adopt this sort of defeatist position on, people's trajectory, their ability to grow, for God to do something redemptive? What are the dangers that we can make? Maybe not just even in a leadership setting, but just in a relational setting. I think those things transfer, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you asked the right person, because I've made those mistakes, because I brought that mindset into relationships. I think the biggest thing is you can give up too easily. When you don't think that people can change, what happens is they'll exhibit a behavior, and then you immediately establish them as that is that type of person. They are a liar. They are a cheat. That is, you attach it to their identity. And then if you're unwilling to accept that, somebody can grow out of this, somebody can change out of this, it's the only lens that you will be able to view them through. And then you're stuck. That relationship is stuck.
And the other thing is, maybe if you don't think people can change, then you sort of shift gears in how you see them, and that you adopt sort of this utilitarian perspective on other people. Like, then I'm just going to use what I can, or for as long as I can, and then move on and start over again. You've seen that, yeah?
I have seen that, and I've experienced that as well. But the thing that I would say that I would add to it as well is that, and you guys will not believe this about me, but I've had that mindset that people can't change.
Yeah.
And what I saw begin to happen as well is that...
You're talking about Becca, your wife?
I'm talking about Becca. Golly,
oh my gosh.
No, I'm talking about my kids.
Yeah,
they cannot change.
Okay.
But what I saw is that it began to leak into the view of myself, because if all of these people can't change, then maybe I can't change either. And so then I get stuck, and then now I move back into performance to prove that I can be better than I am
or hiding.
now. Or hiding.
Yeah,
exactly.
Hide too. Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a big one. Yeah. I mean, so what is maybe each of you one thing to somebody who's listening and goes, okay, I'm in a marriage and I'm not sure they can change, or I'm working at a church or in my job and I don't know if my boss or my employee can change, or I have a friendship and this person keeps taking advantage of me. I'm not sure they're ever going to change, or, just keep filling in that blank for them. What is maybe one or two things that would be encouraging, that it would be hopeful that you could say to that person that would be applicable across maybe all of those scenarios? Wesley, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that believing that somebody can change and engaging in the process of them changing doesn't
So
mean...
it's not passive.
Yes, yes. So first off, it is an active thing. It's engaging with it. But second, it doesn't mean that you just continue to repeat the same cycles over and over. It doesn't mean that you can't establish boundaries with someone. It doesn't mean that you can't tell them no. That, in fact, for many people, that is an important part of the growth process. Yep. So for me as a leader, there were many instances where I think, this person isn't, meeting expectations, or there's something going on with their character that doesn't make them a good fit for this ministry role. And then what I will continue to do is I'm going to let them continue to function in that role and try and change them. And it wasn't until that role was removed from them that they were able to then realize, this is why this didn't work out, and now I can engage in the process of changing.
Yeah. So holding someone accountable, or being the catalyst of a consequence, might actually be the necessary component in their change. Did I hear you right?
Absolutely right.
Terrence, one thing that is hopeful and helpful across maybe multiple different contexts that you could leave somebody with?
Don't do this alone.
Oh,
Be
good.
in community.
Yep.
The hope that you want to see in someone, the change you want to see in someone, it needs to be visible, not just to you, but to others as well. And so one of the things, and this is not just a leadership thing, this is just a life thing. We operate from our own point of view and from our own skills and abilities way too often.
Yeah.
Draw people into the process. What do you see that I'm not seeing? Do you see something? Do you see a trajectory that's better than what I'm seeing right now as well? And then also, and this is going to sound a little harsh, but love them, and sometimes love them from afar. I love you, and I want things to be better.
That's why I have you on the farthest side of the table. That's mine.
I'm just going to keep drawing in. But no, love them from afar and let their words be their words, let their actions be the thing that actually solidifies the change that you want to see in their life.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I would add, you kind of used a word that I was thinking of in my mind, which is trajectory. I think a hopeful person takes a Philippians mindset and says, is there anything worthy of praise that I see here? And is that new? Is that different? So if you see any new life, if you see any new perspective, if you see any new trajectory, affirm that and lean into that because that's new. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I think that's maybe hopeful. How about you, Wesley? Where do you suck? What are you bad at?
Podcasts.
Yeah, we're all learning. We're going to get better.
Yeah. I mean, for me, as a leader, it actually was a very similar situation to what Terrence is describing. But maybe a way that I could specify it is I'd say, especially early on, my personality wants to succeed. It wants to excel. It wants to be the best at everything. It wants to learn and be competent. That's a very high value for my personality.
I would affirm that.
And so, thank you. I feel so affirmed.
That's good. Great.
Just what I needed.
This is a very affirming podcast.
And so, for me, I would look for similarities in the leaders that I would establish. And what that ended up meaning is that I would prioritize somebody's competency. And if they were able to do something well and to do something effectively, the other stuff didn't matter. The problem is that somebody's character is a lot more important than their competency. And so what would
So hold on, slow down. You're saying something good here. Our tendency as leaders is to find other leaders that think like us, sound like us, and value the same things. And what you're saying is not a great plan for building a leadership team or bringing people around you.
Absolutely. Not a good way to diversify, not a good way to, there's a phrase we use here a lot at Bay Hills, let the best idea win. Yeah. Well, the only way to get to the best idea is to explore all of the ideas, and one type of person, one type of personality is not going to be able to think outside of the box in the way that is necessary to get to that best idea.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good. Terrence, when you think about expanding the table to a diversified set of personalities and opinions, how hard is that for church leaders to welcome that? And has that always been what you've seen? Is that, I don't know.
It's, so currently it seems fairly easy to do that. Historically, no.
Yeah.
So I've been in ministry for 20 plus years at multiple churches. And I would say that Bay Hills within the last 3 years is the first time I've seen this happen, where you have multiple people from multiple levels of leadership, multiple backgrounds, being able to speak into something so that, exactly like Wesley said, the best idea wins.
Why is that so hard, though? Why is that so hard to go like, well, it seems like common sense, like, hey, let's get a bunch of people around that have differing perspectives and ideas to get to the best one. Why is that so hard?
Because common sense isn't common. That's number one. And so number two is because as a leader, sometimes as a leader, you walk into the room feeling as though your idea is the best and you want people to get to the point where they agree with you. So essentially you're walking into meetings looking for a rubber stamp. And that's not leadership. That's actually not even collaboration. That's manipulation.
What incoming controversial statement?
Okay. And so as a leadership team, if you understand the skill sets and the abilities of the people surrounding you, there are going to be times where you need to take a back seat because someone has more expertise.
Wes, come on, jump in on this. What is he missing? Because he's saying all the good stuff. Say something. Contribute.
You were taking it the exact direction I was thinking with the stamp. And I think for so many church leaders, and let's be honest, even the three of us at the table, sometimes, especially when we're at our worst, being a church leader, oftentimes the thing that you want is just to have your ego scratched. And you want people to approve of you. You want people to think highly of you. And we're put in a position, we're given a title where people often do that immediately. Right. And so it's been my experience, especially, and this is so odd, especially when my role changed, my title changed, that it takes way more intentionality for me to get people to speak up and get people to share their opinions and especially to disagree with me. And so I think that there is some, it's a combination of two factors. I think sometimes there's just some hesitation, maybe even fear from the people that we lead to be willing to speak up, to be willing to disagree and offer something else. And then two, it requires a humility on behalf of whoever is leading that room to be willing to say, like, even if I've thought about this more than you guys, even if it's your first time hearing about it and I've got this plan that I think is going to work really well, I need to hold that plan loosely enough that if somebody has something better to contribute, then I'm willing to listen to that.
It's good.
I feel like that's actually the hardest culture to create, though.
Yeah.
It's the hardest culture to create because for two reasons. Number one, because people are sometimes fearful of position. And so if I speak up, I might lose position. And number two, sometimes people just aren't bought in enough. So they don't care enough about the process of seeing something to fruition. They say, just tell me what to do. Let me know when we're going to be there, and I'll be there to meet you. But it's not about the process for them. It's about the output at the end. And so if you create this culture of humility, this culture of collaboration, this culture of teamwork, and you say, okay, I might lose, but if the church wins in the end, I'm okay with it. And like I said, I haven't seen that at this church. I have not seen that until the last 3 years, where you can walk into a room, the person with the idea first is not the person who leaves with their idea be the one that wins. And everyone's okay with it.
Well, and you made an interesting statement there, which is, I might lose, but the church still wins. And I would be really careful with that mindset, because I think what happens is now I'm attaching my identity to my idea.
Oh, come on.
And so if it's like, if my idea doesn't win, then that says something about who I am. And therefore, I'm not good enough, or I'm not. When in reality, it's like, no, we're all just here presenting a bunch of ideas. We're trying to get to the thing that's going to be most helpful so all of us can win. It's not a zero-sum game. Yeah. It's not an I win, you lose. It's let's see what we all can bring to the table and figure out the best option. So,
yeah, I mean, I've not always been this way, but I like to, I'll have an idea, and the only way for me to know if it's a good idea is to test it out in a room full of really opinionated people, really strong, smart personalities, to watch them pull it apart and push back. And like, I have my own opinions. I'm going to push back too, but if my idea can't win with a room full of people like that, then it's maybe not a really good idea.
And on the flip side of that, so that's the example where, okay, it's not the best idea and therefore it doesn't win. But What about if you do bring the best idea to the table and then you present it to a group of people who are strong and who are opinionated and who you value what they have to say. And sometimes through the course of that process of picking that idea apart, you end up piecing it back together again. But now not only is it better and more robust, but you have buy-in from the people
That's exactly right. That's exactly, you created buy-in as a result of that process. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could the same idea that I brought won, but the difference now is everybody feels like they own it, and I'm not the only one who has dictated it. That's a different thing altogether. That's very good. You know, my leadership failures are innumerable, but there are a couple that I kept making a lot, the one that I thought I was going to talk about, I'm not going to talk about. And the one that I didn't even think about just sort of popped into my mind is I appointed a lot of leaders in my day and neglected to consider the impact of the spouse on and consider and give weight to the spouse. And they hijacked ultimately that person's efficacy, capacity, and ministry. I have not seen that problem in a long time. And I think mostly because I've kind of, changed the trajectory of how I make those decisions. But like, I guess here's my thing is, why should we, in a church setting, because this is an exclusively church thing, we couldn't do this at Chevron, and but why should we care about the spouse of a leader, the house of a leader, the family of a leader, as much as we do about the competency and character of the leader themselves?
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is, and a lot of times a spouse is a sounding board. At least that's the relationship I have with my wife. And so if there's something that happens at work, if I have a frustration with a coworker or with a boss, which would never happen at Bay Hills, obviously.
That's what I wanted to hear, Wesley. Thank you.
This is an affirming podcast.
That's right. I left with everything I needed for today.
And if there's some sort of a frustration or tension or a disagreement, the person that I'm going to go home and try to process that with oftentimes is going to be my wife. And so I think part of why
and so they're either going to feed into the negative paradigm, the cynical paradigm, the hopeless paradigm, or they're going to point you to Jesus. They're going to point you to something better.
They're going to wreck your spouse or check your spouse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wesley, you're not allowed to do that anymore.
But in reality, that's exactly what my wife does. She's the one who knows me most intimately. She's the one who knows my flaws and failures most intimately. And she is the one that when I bring some sort of a frustration, have you thought of it this way? Have you considered this perspective?
Terrence, have you ever seen a spouse hijacking a person's leadership?
I have been involved in 5. This is going to come as a shock to anyone listening to this, but you're going to be very surprised. But not everyone that leaves Bay Hills leaves on good terms.
What? No.
Not true. Cut the podcast.
Not true.
So,
cut it.
Stop the recording.
Stop recording.
I've been involved in 5, no less than 5 terminations at Bay Hills because of that. And so I think what people get in their mind is that when someone gets hired, it's just the person getting hired for ministry. And that is so not true.
That's right.
There is such an impact of the buy-in from the spouse, for the intentionality of being involved of the spouse. There's such an impact because it says everything.
Yeah.
If you don't see them in anything that's going on with their spouse. If they are at church sporadically, if they're not involved in ministry, it says a lot because it will quickly turn into a job and something that they hate.
Yeah.
And so when we've done hiring, part of the reason that during
this is his calling. This is his thing. I have my own separate thing.
Yeah.
Red flag, red alert, stop, timeout.
Because God's not going to just call one person to ministry. This is the most difficult job in the world. I'm sorry for airline pilots and anyone that's a rocket scientist.
Neurosurgeons.
That's nothing.
Get out of here,
Try to be a pastor
neurosurgeons.
for a day. They'll switch for a day. Let's see who's more successful.
I'll cut a fool today.
That's East LA coming out right now. I love it.
All right.
But no, it's God's not just going to call one person to ministry. They're going to call both to ministry, and he's going to continue to call people to ministry. And so it is very, very difficult for a spouse to have the mindset of, no, this is just their job and I do this thing. No, this is a calling for both of you to be involved. And I have seen very high level pastors at this church eject because their spouse sunk them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even what they do say, it's what they don't say. I mean, I have interviewed very high capacity leaders with high character and high competency. And then, the spouse is sitting in the corner, not saying much. And I think we're willing to just go, all right, we're good. Let's move along. Because I've got this person in front of me that I can use to fill a role instead of seeing them as a whole, if that makes sense.
Well, just to let you know that in our search,
WHOLE, just for those people who are wondering,
we know. Okay. In our search for a senior pastor, when we ultimately found you, there were several people that we interviewed where they have said, number one, you don't need to talk to my spouse, or number yes, or number two.
Is that true?
It is true.
Get out of here.
100%.
You did not.
Yes, it is. It's true. You don't need to talk to them.
You can't talk to my spouse?
Not can't. You don't need to.
You don't need to.
You don't need to. So we're trying to set up a time for us to be able to Skype or for them to come in.
Did they come in on a covered wagon? Did they? What arrangement was this?
Because it's the mindset. It's the mindset of I can do the job, hire me for the job, and not understanding the totality of what it is. There's also people where we got later stages, and exactly what you said
Hey, you stay back there and churn butter! Keep churning butter!
Oh my gosh.
I'm trying to interview!
It's actually really funny that they're on a video call and telling their wife to churn butter, but it's fine. But
he's allowed to use it.
He's allowed to.
She's not offered any tools
He's
from
not
after
Amish.
1800.
She's Amish. And so, but there are also times where like we would interview, and exactly what you said is true.
Bananas.
There was nothing from them. Nothing from them.
Wesley, have you ever seen a spouse hijack a ministry? Or a leader, let's put it that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. For me, the situation that comes to mind is the spouse was only functioned to affirm the leader's frustrations that he would bring about the people that he was reporting to.
There you go. That's good. That's
it led
great.
to this very vicious cycle of frustration, anger. What's the word? Resentment. Is the word that I would use to define what I saw from that leader and from that spouse.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and here's the thing. I mean, I came out of the marketplace into ministry, and if I could do it all over again, I would absolutely try and translate this principle into the marketplace. If I was hiring a regional director or something, I would be like, hey, tell me about your wife. I mean, I may not interview the wife. That would be weird in a marketplace scenario. But tell me about your family. Tell me about how things are. I can ask those questions because here's the deal. It makes a world of difference to know that the person at home supports what they're about to get into versus somebody at home who's pretty much departed or separate from what they're about to. What is it, Wesley? Why are you looking like that? What is it?
Just on this topic, I was thinking to myself, my hiring process was different, unusual, weird, in that, they interviewed me and they said, we think he's a terrible fit. We don't like him at all. And then they talked to Andrea and they're like, we're going to hire him.
Yeah.
It was the opposite.
Well, I mean, she is compelling. I mean, that's, yeah.
So can I ask you a question then, Alan? So if there's anyone listening to this podcast, they're thinking about possibly going into ministry. Can you unpack what it means
ministry, okay,
for a spouse to support their spouse going into ministry? Because we're saying support is not passive, is active, correct? So unpack what that would mean for them to support them going into ministry, even if they are not being hired for ministry themselves.
Well, so I would say for Shannon and I, all I can do is speak to the process for Shannon and I and hope that translates to other people. So when Shannon and I knew that it was time to look for where God was taking us next, we interviewed for a church. The only church outside of California that we interviewed for was a church in New Mexico, and it was in Albuquerque. And Albuquerque has insane crime and drugs, but it's surrounded by all of this natural beauty. And so my wife and I actually traveled out to this particular church to visit the place. And I remember after a day of interviews, I was really excited. And we got back to the hotel, and my wife started crying in the bed next to me. And I just immediately said to her, we don't have to stay here. We don't have to do this. And what that did is that freed her to not just go along with me, but to partner with me. And because she knew that she wasn't sort of taking something from me, what she did is it actually freed her to start going, okay, well, I don't want you to just eject. I just wanted to know that we would say no if this isn't the right place. Yeah. So then she started processing between her and God and the context more objectively, because she didn't feel like I was just driving the direction of the whole thing. Number one. And then number two, my wife has a calling of her own. She's a nurse here in the East Bay, and where she lands with respect to that matters as much as mine. So God's weaving these two callings together. They should intersect in the same place. I shouldn't just be like, hey, figure it out when we get where I'm going, because my calling trumps yours. A pastor is not a higher calling than a nurse. It's not a higher calling than than anything for that matter. And so she actually was offered her job here in the East Bay before I was made an offer here at Bay Hills. And so one of the ways that I knew Bay Hills was where God wanted me was that my wife was already established here in the East Bay in her role at Children's Hospital Oakland. So those are the only two things that I can really offer up as commentary to that. So, we're all growing. Speaking of growth, we have an exciting season ahead of us. Terrence, what are some of the things we're going to be talking about this season?
We're going to be talking about rebelling against comparison. So what does it mean for you to be content with who you are and where you are instead of always trying to keep up with the Joneses? We're going to have a couple of different behind-the-scenes shows, behind the scenes of worship, behind the scenes.
Wesley, what are you hoping for that, the behind-the-scenes worship thing?
I want to give people an insight into what it looks like as a worship leader, and also beyond my own perspective, and introduce some other great folks, some of our worship leaders from here at Bay Hills Church.
Are we going to have guests on this show?
Ooh. You know, it's not just going to be the three of us. You're welcome.
What other behind the scenes, Terrence? Didn't we have one other one scheduled?
Yeah, on teaching.
Oh, so some of the teaching team.
Some of the teaching. What does it look like to create a message? What does it look like to create the entirety of a service? Things like that. It's going to be really, really neat. And then one that I'm extremely excited about is deconstruction, and just as important, reconstruction. So
you're talking about the whole de-church, unchurch. I've left the faith. I deconstructed my faith, and no longer walking in the faith. And then we're going to try and come at it from this angle of don't deconstruct your faith, reconstruct your faith, but let's do it in a way that the Bible commends us to doing.
Absolutely.
Okay. And what else? Bay Hills history. What are we going to do there, Wesley?
Offer some insights into what the last 30 years have looked like. As it turns out, Bay Hills did not start existing when Pastor Allen got here.
What?
I know.
How dare you?
This is such an unaffirming place.
I still remember the day when I came up with the name Bay Hills. I was staring at the bay on a hill, and
that's way more accurate than you think.
Actually, I do know the story, so it's true.
And if you want to know that story, you'll just have to listen to the History Podcast.
Yep. All right. Well, let's wrap this thing up. Terrence, how long have you been in ministry, and why should people listen going forward?
I've been in ministry, thinking about it since I was 18, so 27 years at this point, because you're going to hear what it really means to follow Christ, to follow him as a fallible person, how to learn and how to move forward in a hopeful way.
That's great. Wesley, so as the resident worship artistic personality, what are you hoping for, and how long have you been in ministry?
Yeah, I've been in ministry my whole life, man. In vocational ministry for the last 8 years, in full-time ministry for the last 5. And the thing that I'm hoping is there is just so much that cannot be done in a Sunday morning. A huge part of my role is putting together our services, deciding what we teach about, like all of those different types of questions that need answers. But beyond that, beyond what we have the time and space for, there is so much to discuss. There is so much to learn. There is so much knowledge to be imparted from you guys and from other guests that we're going to have. And so my hope for the time is just that people would grow in their walk with Jesus, that they would leave a little bit more hopeful, be able to rebel against the culture that we are in a positive way, and just be better equipped.
Yeah, you guys haven't said anything. I mean, you've said everything. I don't need to really add to that. My hope for this is exactly that. Just that we would speak into the noise with hope and conviction, and that people would be able to live with hope and conviction. So you guys would do us a favor, for those of you who are watching or listening, share the episode, subscribe, follow the podcast. It helps people hear more hope. And until next time, be a rebel, stay hopeful.